What's up, storytellers? In this video, we talk about shooting great video testimonials, how to actually shoot them, and why it's so important to actually be shooting video case stories and all the criteria. There's 4 main things that you gotta think about when shooting them. And the last one is probably the most important, that will make or break great video case stories. All right, so we're gonna talk about shooting great video case stories. Now, why do you wanna do this? I know it sounds like a lot of work, and all great things are, but when you shoot these great ones, when you really get those emotions out, when you really get that story out, you can transform not only your business, but use these for years. Your ROI becomes unlimited. Sure, you might spend a few $1,000s on one of these videos, but you could 10x that in 1 year. You could 100x that. We've got clients that have used these for 8-9 years, but you have to produce them the right way. And you've already watched, hopefully now, on setting goals, on planning, creating the questions, where you're going to use them, what type of campaigns you're going to use them in, thinking through all that, because it's important when we go into production. And we're going to talk about the 4 things that we need to do and the big mistake that I see people make. I've been doing this for over 10 years and interviewed all sorts of people in all sorts of businesses, from lawyers to doctors to dentists. We've worked with other agencies, helping them tell their story. When you get one of these right, it's absolutely amazing. So the first thing you got to know is you've done all the planning. You gotta know where you're gonna do it. I've shot, over a course of 3 days at events, 60 video case stories for software companies. We were at Retail X and shot a huge number of these and did a multi-set setup and did a ton of these. We've done them at events for software companies. Tarkenton Financial was one of our clients. I love, if you go over to Tarkenton Financial, Fran Tarkenton, they're great people. We use these case stories and we plan to use them in their About Us video. Man, it transformed that About Us video because of all that planning that went into it. If you have an event, if you know there's someplace that your clients are gonna be, and right now this is in the middle of the pandemic, that's gonna be a little tough, but that's a great way to plan it. People have flown us out to events and found story crews, videographers for their events. We did build, grow, scale, and got to shoot all these amazing case stories. And not only that, we got to shoot the stories of their employees, of their team. Got a lot of emotion out in there, and it was just phenomenal. So knowing where is crucial. And I know that seems easy, but knowing where is where you start, because you can also do them in your office. You can do them at the client's house. You can set up an event, or you can do it virtual. If you need help with planning any of this, there's a link down below to start your case story planning, to talk to someone. Make sure just to click on it, let us know. It sounds daunting, but it's worth the planning. So you can do it virtual. And then if you're gonna do it virtual, you gotta figure out, where virtually, because you gotta think, who you're talking to. If you're talking to someone who's not as technologically adept, you need to have a backup plan for that virtual story. So where is the first place? Next up, we want to go to how. How are we gonna shoot this? What gear are we gonna use? Are we gonna have a videographer? Knowing where we're gonna be using this will make a difference too. And maybe, this is version 1. So thinking about how, if you're gonna do the video yourself, I like the off-camera talking, where someone's the camera's right over the interviewer's shoulder. You have 2 cameras set up, you're lit, you've got a nice, big, pretty background. Those make for really great shots. And I would suggest doing those, getting as much space in there as possible. And of course, make sure you have a great mic, and you have a great lighting setup, your lighting, and a tripod. I would definitely consider a tripod or a stabilizer. This is where having a videographer really helps. If you have an event or you want to make a bigger one of these, this is where having one of the story crews videographers will really, really help you. But I want you to know that you can still do this yourself. You can if you're setting up in your office, you can have an iPad, have it lit well, have a good mic, and have a tripod. Because what we definitely want is great sound and good lighting. You don't want them backlit. And I like the off-camera for a few reasons. First of all, it's kind of intimidating when someone's telling their story to the camera. Most people don't know how to speak to a camera. They get more nervous. That nervousness comes out, right? So that's another reason it's much easier to talk to someone and have a conversation than it is to speak to the camera. You'll have some people that like want to tilt towards the camera. That's fine. You want to bring them back. Plus, it's just, if we'd like to drop in on these kind of conversations, they seem more authentic than if someone's speaking to the camera and going, this so-and-so got me $1 million, or, it's an unusual way to speak. I think speaking to the camera works best if it's instructional, if it's authoritative. But for many people, even just speaking to the camera at all, it's very nerve-wracking. So that's the how, good lighting, good sound. We've decided where so we can control that sound. Next up, the question that we want to ask is what other assets we want. We want B-roll. This is the cutaway footage that really makes things entertaining. So we need to have a good B-roll list of what we want to get ahead of time. We also want to be thinking about other assets that we want. Maybe you want pictures. Can we get pictures? Can we B-roll of the person interacting with the primary provider, whoever this is about? Can we get that? What kind of B-roll do we need? And planning that out is very, 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 very important. I've had Thomas Duran on Garlic Marketing Show talking about B-roll, and we'll put a link down below to that. It is absolutely crucial. Most times when you see and visually you're like, that's a fantastic video, it's because of B-roll. So having that planned out is important. Getting other assets ahead of time. And if you have assets that can demonstrate what's going on, make sure to have that set up. Now you've done your strategy, you know what content you want to get out. So you should have a good idea of what type of images, what type of visuals we want to accompany this person's case story. And then, you want to plan out time for that B-roll if you're shooting it in your office. If you have a single day shoot at an event, that's one thing that we do. It's like boom, 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 boom. We usually have someone like with shooting B-roll and someone doing the interviewing, so we can get a lot of those stories out because we want to get a lot of that B-roll. It's super important. Plus, you want to make sure that you're getting, on a side note, releases. Releases. Always make sure that you get some sort of release. I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on TV. But I will tell you that you want to get that release because someone down the road is going to be like, I don't want you to use that. And you'll be like, you told me I could. Because it's going to be really hard to pull that back. So make sure to get releases on the side note. It's another nice thing to have along that way is, if you can, this is why it's important to hire a team, is have someone that's kind of your wrangler that day, who's grabbing the person that's going to do the case stories. The videographer should be focusing, the interviews should be focusing, they should have lighting and sound if you have a full team. So having someone wrangling that, if you have a lot of people, or even just having an assistant to make that person, the subject, feel comfortable is very helpful. We've talked about a lot of other things. We've said, where. We've talked about how. We've talked about what type of imagery we need. You've already developed your questions, but the most important thing is, the interviewer and why. Besides the subject, you need someone. If you're not, I don't like to interview for my own, so I like to have other people interview for our case stories. It's weird for me to ask people, well, talk about me or talk about our relationship, even though it's their story. It's hard for me to dive deep, but you need someone that's really understands where this is going, what pieces we need to pull out of that person. Because simply asking questions, if you have a list of 10 questions, you're not going to get always a great story. Once in a while. But to really get that story out, to get that emotion. And if you see any of our case stories, you'll see emotion in a lot of them. That doesn't come naturally. It's not from a list of questions. People bang out the questions and leave. They don't want to be on camera for that long. But if you're having a conversation and you can dive deep and you can get those moments and emotions, we want to get those moments out of them, those moments of realization and the emotions that accompany it. If you know as an interviewer how to connect with that person and get that out of them, man, you're going to get special videos. And we've done this for so long, and over, I've had people say, well, you get great stories, and then we hire someone else and it's not really that great, and we did everything the same. It's because of that interview technique. And you want to have someone that knows that. That's what we're training the Story Cruise teams to do. My team at Authentic Web is trained to do. We're training other people to pull that story out, because it has to be pulled out. And that interviewer, the person's going to play off them. We play off that reactions. You're going to be able to recognize when there's sensitive subjects that we don't want to dive into, and subjects that we do want to dive into further that maybe they're holding back. It's more than just asking questions. And when you want to get those facial features, you want to get that facial response, and get that voice and hear it and get that story and really get them to let go. Man, I can tell you, there's been so many times that you dig, and then you find it, and it's amazing. And there's times the subject cries, and I'll cry too. It's because you get this emotional response together. And it's amazing. One of my favorites is over at Build, Grow, Scale. I'll try and put a link to it down below. But Anna, who talks a story about building her business. And at first it was just like a normal conversation, but we really dug into what that meant to her. And that came across. And that's something that you should be looking for, to be able to dive deep into those stories. Because when you get those emotions, that is gold. Literally, you can make that into gold, because you can go make a lot of money and go buy some gold. But that's what we want to find. So don't discount who's going to be doing that interviewing. Make sure it's someone who can connect. And if you have someone in your office, make sure it's someone that can connect. If you're getting a videographer, make sure that they have interview skills. It's not something that's natural for everyone. And most videographers, most filmmakers start out really becoming experts at cameras, at cinematography. They don't focus on those interview skills, and knowing marketing and knowing those interview skills is so crucial. So that's it. So if you want to shoot a great one, you got to decide where you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, what technique, who's going to run the show, getting that wrangler, what types of added B-roll and imagery you want to get, and then finally have a great interview to pull that story out. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe over at storycruise.com. Leave us some comments, leave us some questions. I'm here to help you. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you in the next one.